Thank you very much. All right, let's move on then to our next speaker. It was Tim Wildman, Senior Fisheries Biology of Connecticut Deep. Our change in procedure this year to pick up eggs at Kensington and to pick them up before Christmas makes a couple of changes in our procedure. That before Christmas business means that you're looking at a long vacation right off the bat to start off the program. And secondly, you're going to be charged with keeping these animals for about 1 month longer than you're used to, because the good stocking time doesn't change. That's going to be towards the end of April and into early May. Stocking before the middle of April is not going to be permitted at a number of these sites because of the problems of flood, climate, etc. So we have a longer distance to travel, which requires very good, very persistent tank discipline and temperature control. That's why we have Tim Wildman here today to tell us not a one-on-one session on the DI index, but the features of this longer period and its significance. So Tim, you take it from there.
Yeah, as you can see here, we have an overtype of the previous presentation that was given at the last orientation for the new teachers, which was simply an overview because they don't know these changes that are going on. But for our veterans gathered here today, we are providing an update and how you can pull this off. And so here we have the salmon spawning. A female salmon will produce about 700 to 800 eggs per pound. Our typical Atlantic salmon female weigh on the order of 10 pounds, so you're talking about 7,500 eggs per animal. Once they are taken at the hatchery, that's actually Steve spawning a salmon up at White River a few years ago. The male is then expressed onto the eggs, and they're water hardened and put into some incubation trays, and they sit there for a month until they eye up. At that point, they're safe to handle again, and that's when we bring them to you. Now this is happening at Kensington starting in a couple of weeks. Kensington doesn't have the ability like you guys to chill their water, and so it's ambient water temperatures, and so eggs they're developing at a faster rate, and that's why we need to get them to you guys at an earlier date. All right, so yeah, traditionally you've received your eggs in mid-January, and you stock out mid-April until mid-May. Really targeting the end of April, beginning of May is what we feel is ideal. Now you're going to get your eggs in mid-December. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen. This is the first year, and so we're going to see, how things play out. So just be patient. We'll let you know as soon as possible. Your eggs will be received at about the same DI. And the question, of course, is can you stock them out since you're getting them earlier? Can you delay their stock out time? And the answer, of course, is yes. So to show this, so we start with a spreadsheet that shows that you're getting these eggs in the beginning of January. You've got a starting DI of 38, and whatever your DI is, your exact DI is, when you get the eggs, you can just overtype, or in this spreadsheet, I have it so you can overtype right here, and it is transferred over to the left in the cumulative DI column. And so here you can see there's a few things to point out. I've got different fill colors that correspond to some color patterns underneath the cumulative DI. And so, for instance, we see that you've received dyed eggs, and the eyeing stage can occur from 29 to 47, and that's highlighted in that column. If you go down, the green indicates when they're hatching, and so under the normal scenario, we're hatching out in mid-February, and if we scroll further down, we can see that our stock out is the beginning of May. That's great. That's how it worked. You guys are all familiar with that. Under the new scenario, what we suggest is that you have a earlier, you receive the eggs earlier, you receive them at the same DI, but by, one thing I forgot to mention is that we suggest you keep your tanks under the old scenario at about 4 degrees or thereabouts. If that were to happen, you would have to stock these fish out earlier. So what you need to do is to come up with a scenario that delays their hatching. And simply by dropping the degree, the temperature a degree down to 3, you can see that they hatch out a little bit earlier than under the old regime, beginning of February instead of the middle of February. But more importantly, the delay to the hatch out makes it so you're stocking out at about the same time. So, in a nutshell, that's sort of the scenario that we'd like you to follow. If possible, let's see how it is if we drop the temperature down to 2. We see that the hatching occurs closer to the old regime, and the stock out is delayed even further until the end of May, which we would rather not see. That's getting a little bit late into the season. We'd rather be, mid-May or a little bit earlier than that. Yeah, so in summary, we do apologize for this change, but it's, as Steve explained, unavoidable. And even though we are changing, you can see where you can maintain your same stocking dates. Some tanks have a hard time at maintaining real low temperatures below, like that 2-degree scenario. You may be forced to advance your stock out date if you can't sustain those low numbers. So the Excel is useful in both planning and projecting, but also monitoring your development. And it's the actual that matters here, not the predicted. And we also recommend that you plan to stock out a little bit earlier rather than later, because that will give you the ability to plan for the unforeseen. If the janitor or whoever accidentally trips over the cord and doesn't plug the chiller back in, you can make some of that up without really affecting the stock out date too much. And in looking at all of this, it's a learning experience for all of us. And so this time next year, we're going to have a much better idea about how this plan was put into effect and what changes may or may not be needed. So we're hopeful that you can take notes on your experience this year and provide us that feedback so we can roll that out to everyone. That's it. Thanks.
This stage of my career, I wasn't looking forward to any more learning experiences. I guess we'll have to put up with it. Tim mentioned a couple things I want to comment on before we take a break, and one was power outages. We had 2 last year, which were very interesting, which have come up almost every year, and I'll throw them out as a warning. And that's the construction crew that's coming in perfectly legitimately on Saturday morning to fix the lights in the east wing and turns all the power off on that half of the building. Twice we've lost tanks last year because of that. Off long enough over the weekend, not so much temperature but oxygen. Come in Monday morning and bingo, half those fish were dead and the other half died shortly thereafter. Nobody's fault really, except that the word of a tank in the school which is vulnerable didn't get around to everybody. The principal didn't know about it, or somebody didn't know about it, or the word wasn't given to the maintenance people. Make sure the responsible offices in your school know that there's a tank in here which will suffer if it loses power like that, if power is turned off or denied for any significant period of time. That's a probably internal school communication. Also, let me talk about stocking dates. There have been 6, 7 schools who have already picked out and reserved stocking dates. A couple have reserved Salmon River all to themselves because 6 or 7 buses gets that place for a school that comes with that kind of crowd. What I'm saying is you've got to pick that out early. That stocking date is the end date of all of that formula you're talking about. You don't know where you're going until you have one, and it takes a while to get one. You got to do it sort of tentatively. You got to reserve it with me, and then make, if it's Salmon River or the Farmington or Devil's Hop Yard, or you may have to reserve it with a town or a private facility, depending on your site. And then you got to get a bus, and then you have to make sure the principal. It's not a simple proposition. So start early to get your stocking date nailed down. There is a stocking manual on the website, which gives you instructions and describes each and every site. They haven't changed since last year. You need permission for a number of them from the authority itself, from the town of Granby, from South Granby, from Hokum Farm, if you use the Hokum Farm facility. You need to do it through CRSA, which is through myself, for the Salmon River, for the Farmington River, and for Devil's Hop Yard, the 3 major parking sites. And you got to start early on that, so I encourage you to get going early. Okay.
As some of you know, if you try to get your tanks really cold, if you get it down to 2 degrees, sometimes you may have some icing problems, icing around the chilling units. So this year, more than most years, be careful of how you load those eggs. Make sure the eggs stay away from the chilling unit toward the front, because if you do have icing, it may not be the end of the world if you have a little icing. As long as you're holding your temperatures, the icing could be okay. You just don't want that ice growing almost like fungus and then enveloping or even touching those eggs. So.
One afterthought from the past discussion. I think we have recommended in a variety of ways to people with old chillers that they get them looked at before this season starts by a HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning technician. There may be janitors and custodians in your school who are good at that. That's a possibility. If you had to pay for it, it'd be worth it if you have an older chiller. We've saved some, gotten more life out of others, and avoided some catastrophes by seeing that done in the past. So I encourage you to look at your machinery as carefully, and if it has any age at all, any signs of wear, have somebody look at it this year before you start. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit, just a few minutes from this handout for everybody. Talks about 212-213 schedule. This is to emphasize the pre-Christmas delivery. November 1, request stockout dates. Well, do so soon and do so early. As I mentioned, we already have some schools that have signed themselves up for the coming year, and that's a good thing. We're going to need to be up and running by about the 21st. We anticipate delivering eggs the weeks of the 7th and 10th. You need to be, by then, before then, up, running, filled, and confident that you have things in working order. And you're going to have to make an arrangement over the Christmas vacation, similar to the one you've had to make before for spring vacation, about getting that temperature data at least every other day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, whatever. You don't have to do it every day. You can do it every other day, as it would be a case of a series of weekends, and average the data for the missing day. But this comes right off the bat, and if you get it, if it goes haywire, gets screwed up at the beginning, it's hard to get out of that hole. This is a bad time for that to come along. We can't do anything about it, so we need to manage it. So I encourage you to make arrangements. You've got 3 sources of manpower. You've got teachers, you've got students. Don't forget your custodians. There are schools in this system where custodians have, with great pleasure, joined in taking temperatures. That's not going to be true of all of them. I know that, but it may be true of some. So think about that too. Your liaisons may be of some help. You can't count on that, and I can't tell them to do this. Some of them have as many as 12 schools, and that would be an impossible obligation. for them. So you're going to have to figure it out primarily among yourself, your students and their parents, and your custodians, and make arrangements for some every other day temperature taking during that slack period. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or questions about that. I think you've had as I say, it's exactly the same experience that you've had earlier with respect to spring vacations. Now, we've talked about the significance of the extra month in the schedule. I don't think I need to dwell on that. And we've talked about getting stocking taken care of early, and I don't need to talk about that. So what I think we'll talk about is to get Jim Carroll back up here again and review the library asset that we now have. It's quite an extraordinary collection of data that is available. Elizabeth Kendall's been very helpful in arranging that for us, and Jim Carroll knows much more about it than I do. So Jim, can you give us an update on that?
Yes.
One of the fortunate things for us is that Elizabeth Kendall, a teacher and a grant writer, joined our board of directors and brought in-house someone who had experience in education. And she's been working hard to try and improve the quality of the information that will become available to you or has been available to you in the past. Now, everyone in this room, I am sure, has gone to a new teacher orientation. And at that orientation, you were given a Fish Friends booklet, an operations manual. In the beginning, we did not have a stocking guide. Dick has written an excellent stocking guide as how to go through the stock out process. You've got a vinyl map, which is of the Connecticut River Basin. You've got some standard materials, and you've got a set of rocks that came with a. Now, the program's gotten pretty big. I mean, last year we had 6,400 children involved. And the state of Connecticut has got standards which they're implementing for science. And we're not a hardware provider for education, we're a software provider of education. And if we don't provide the software or the materials you want, and at the same time supports our objective of improving education about salmon and cold water species, we've missed the target, missed the boat. So what Elizabeth has done is to take all of those materials. For example, the Adopt a Salmon manual is over 100 pages. The Fish Friends is something like 100 or so. All of that now has been scanned. And so she has put together a library. It next needs some work by a librarian in doing the cataloging and labeling so that you can easily see what's available. And our objective, we think, and it depends on feedback we want from you today, the objective, we think, is to have all of those materials available from our website. Now, in addition to the materials that I've talked about, we'll have, in the past, we have not necessarily distributed a DI spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet. But Steve Gebhardt I've given him a flash drive. He's going to give me that, as well as his presentations.
I have it already.
Okay, but we're going to have that. Then I've written a DI spreadsheet using Apple's Numbers software. Does the same kind of thing. So we'll have it for the two, as I've said earlier, for the two platforms. Now, the question is, and may I add, some of the materials, graphic materials that we've had in the past are on the table in the back as examples. My old back wasn't strong enough to bring all the manuals and everything here, but most of you have seen the material. So the purpose of this quick session is to say to you, I've put a questionnaire with the form that I've handed out. We need feedback. At the end of the day, we have to meet your needs and the needs of the state of Connecticut, and we need some guidance. So what I would like to do is open the floor up to the first question. And I don't have the form in front of me. And I would solicit just a few minutes talk with the objective, longer term, send us emails. Send us a memo, send us a letter, give us some feedback so that we can begin to understand what you want and what you need. Now, one of the things Elizabeth and I talked about this issue, and we have with Dick, is security. When we first put our website up, and we've got a wonderful website manager, Martha Sherman, we put it up and had the site available, and we had bad stuff show up on the site. That's before we put together a username and a password. So now the question is, should we have two sites, one for teachers with names and passwords and one for students? Should you let students get on that with, and have it so that material can be accessed but not input into it? So it's, there's a wall protecting.
Teacher resource page of some kind, just for URLs or whatever, that we can, it doesn't necessarily have to go through the website, but some kind of suggested sites or.
Dick, as part of what he's done, has got in the in school directory, in the back of the school directory, is a list of sites where you can get information about salmon.
Okay, we're going to come down the home stretch. A couple of loose ends here. Reference has been made to the stocking schedule, which has been on the website. That's generally not up until we get all the schools in and know who the players are. And that task was completed this morning, as a matter of fact. Where'd Denise go? And we have just taken in our last school this morning. So we're complete. There will, that schedule of who is stocking where in the major stockings will be up probably in a week. Okay, you should assume you have the same site that you used last year. Assume that you have the same liaison that you had last year. If there are any changes, we'll get to you with those as soon as we can. Somebody's asking about dams. Was that you from Nottawa? Yes. And fishways and things. Excuse me.
About fishways, yeah.
The best, I've tried to see most of the fishways around here. We have a class, as a matter of fact, that stocks its fish in Grand Brook Park on the Salmon Brook so as to be close to the Rainbow Dam. It goes over there for a field trip in the afternoon, hoping to see salmon. That's a long shot, and it's a small window. The best viewing situation that's closely available is at the Holyoke Dam. They have a flume that's, they have an elevator, no fish ladder there. It's taken up on one end, goes through a flume, probably the size of these two tables to get up above the dam into upstream. And you walk through a corridor with viewing windows, the size of the windows behind you, absolutely tremendous opportunity to see fish. I saw the last time I was there, hundreds of shad that afternoon, striped bass, lampreys, and one small bass which looked totally confused and was lost. So you can see fish, lots of, and occasionally different kinds. That's a great place to look. I don't know their hours. There's a number around. I have it someplace as to who you call. It may have changed since I was there. But it's a terrific place to see things. And you will see plenty of shad during the shad season.
Generally mid-May to late June.
Okay, there you are. That's what, Massachusetts Power Electric, I guess, yeah.
Holyoke Gas and Electric.
Holyoke Gas and Electric, yeah, big dam. Okay. I was going to tell you a fish story, but I won't. Yes, I will too. Ed Albrecht was talking about insect viewing and capture on the Salmon River. One of the best programs for field day exercises, stocking exercise. We have several that are terrific. One really great one is that of the Foot School from New Haven, Pam Harmon. They have an insect viewing station there that is beyond anything I've seen in terms of the numbers of samples they have collected, textbook drawings of what they are, and the life cycles of what they are. I was up there it's a true story, last spring, and I noticed they had some small to mid-sized golden stoneflies. that they had taken up there. Terrific little creature. They had the black ones too, but the golden ones, I said, I didn't know that fish. By God, I got one of those. I looked through the fly box I had, and I had an absolutely perfect fit. This is a true story. I went out and caught 3 trout on that fly before I lost the fly. It's the only one I had. I haven't been back since. But it was terrific. It was a great exercise, and it was a great experience. Okay, we now want to talk about what Steve was talking about. He made the comment, dealing with our future, that not having a true restoration is too bad. That's a big change. It's a big change, a mission-type change as far as we're concerned at Connecticut River. We got formed by mostly salmon fishermen who had great admiration for this species. Notwithstanding that, most of us, myself included, fished for years for Atlantic salmon, killed them and ate them with great relish, as a matter of fact, because they're delicious. Don't kill them anymore. It's all catch and release, and that's a great thing. It took a long time coming, but it did. But that's not going to be enough. But we got captivated by this species, and the idea of a 4-state program, blessed by the federal government, act of Congress, that was a great thing. Really tremendous momentum, a wonderful ethos to work in, and a great magnet for dedicated people who want to preserve that species. There's a change in that. And the question for Connecticut River Salmon Association is, what does that change mean in terms of our activities? And I'm sort of curious what you thought of the legacy program that Steve outlined earlier. I'd be very interested to see what you think. Any inconsistency about our participating in the same way? Useful, advantageous for us to participate in the same way. Anybody have any reactions on that? We have to, of course, decide to do that, which I anticipate we will. But nonetheless, I'm curious about what you think about our role, given our past history.
Dick, stand in front of the mic.
I will. Did that last question get through?
Yes.
Any thoughts? Polly, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, I do. That I think it's extremely important that you continue. I think there's a message for kids that we make a lot of efforts at restoration of populations, and we succeed at many levels. It isn't necessarily a full restoration. Sometimes it's just understanding issues that relate to it, the ecosystem, the watershed, how this affects other endangered species, what we can learn from it. There's a lot kids can take away, even if the program has suffered some as a result of the loss of the White River hatchery. I hope you continue forever.
Do you think the judgment of your school or your school board or your principal is affected by this change? There's some publicity going
I
around
haven't
it.
heard anything along those lines, and I wouldn't expect it. I think we can advocate for it if it should arise, but it hasn't.
There was a powerful comment. About 10 years ago, I got tired of working for this program, doing the same thing year after year, and I really got kind of bored, and I said, I'm gonna quit. I talked to Steve that week for some reason, and he reminded me that Rainbow Dam was open one day, Visitors Day, something like that.
Open house.
Open house. I said, well, I'll go down there. I went down there. There were 2 14-pound bright fish had come in that morning, taken out in a separate tank. And the sight of those things got me signed on for another 10 years. I think you may have done the same thing this morning. Those are powerful comments. I think they're going to be very helpful to us. We have a little reflecting to do, but we'll come out the better for it. As a legal matter, legal advice, free legal advice is worth what you pay for it, Bob. But I think we can fit anything into the generalities of the language of our certificate, so I don't worry about that in the slightest. But I thank you very much for that. That's been very helpful. Anyway, thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Thank you.